A lot going on in the world right now, and the guy we have with us on the line, he's a former special counsel to Bill Clinton. Of course, currently he represents Michael Cohen, and this guy has been an American political operative, a consultant, a lobbyist, an author, a television commentator, and we're very, very happy to have him on the show. He is Lanny Davis. Lanny, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Well, I'm fine. Look, I still am a good friend and great supporter of, but I do not represent Michael Cohen now that he's out and free. And
I was unaware of that.
That's a correction. That's okay. No
Fair
problem.
enough. I was unaware of that. Lenny, before we get to the questions, I want to say I met you many years ago. I'm talking maybe close to 20 years ago. All right, let's go back. The Democratic National Convention in Boston. Do you remember that?
So I'm going to do the deduction. The subtraction would be 1996, and that's Clinton.
It was in Boston. You were on the I believe you were doing the Sean Hannity show, and I met you afterwards, and I said, Lanny, why are you so nice to Sean Hannity? And you laughed at me, and we spoke for a couple minutes. You guys get into good battles over the years, but I said to you, I gave you a little crap. I said you were too nice to Sean, and I remember that.
First of all, I think it was 2000 that I did.
Yes.
Hannity at the convention.
Right, in Boston. Yep, correct.
That's 20 years, you're right.
Yeah, long time ago.
Here's the answer to the question. I get that question all the time. The reason that I'm nice to Hannity, I haven't been on the show for some time since Trump was elected, but I know what happens if I am nice to him. His ratings go down.
That might be true.
That probably actually is true.
Complains to me when we're in a commercial and I hear my earpiece, will you stop being so nice to me? You're killing me.
Well, to be fair and to be honest, I've always appreciated it when you came on Sean's show to give another perspective. I wish other shows would do the same, like the Mark Levins and other right-wing conservative hosts that are afraid to have people on the other side. I can't stand that. Let me ask you this. Since you're the type of person that has gone on those other shows, don't you think Joe Biden, I think this is what hurt Hillary Clinton. She didn't go on Fox News, and you listen, she's going to be attacked. We all know that, right? But I think it's smart for these Democrats to go on these other shows and to make these appearances. I thought Hillary made that mistake.
100% agree. Even if they're disrespectful, which is always the fear of a press secretary and a media advisor,
right?
Is the boss is going to say, "Now that was a great idea."
Yeah,
I was abused and yelled at, and what was that about?
Right.
Next time you have a great. But the fact is, and when Roger Ailes was alive, and they wanted me to be on Fox, and I was reluctant, he showed me the demographics of the Fox audience, which maybe a lot of your listeners don't know. It's about 50% Democrat.
Right. No, that's a good point.
And the other 50% are Kool-Aid drinking, always believe everything that Sean says or Trump or anybody.
Yeah.
But there's 50% that's pretty open-minded.
And Lanny, I'll even go a step further. Hillary, and listen, I'm a big Howard Stern guy. I grew up loving Howard Stern, right? And Hillary never did the Stern show, and she did it after, she did it recently. And I said, you got to reach out to those people, whether they're people that have never voted before. I just think Joe Biden needs to do more of that. And listen, I'm not one of those people. I'm going to vote for Joe Biden. I'm not one of those people that is saying get out of the basement and being disrespectful. But I just think Joe Biden needs to get out there more. Would you agree with that?
I do agree. I think the pandemic has obviously been a factor, but now that he's got a running mate, the way they were yesterday, those were spontaneous campaign speeches that weren't reading. At least I couldn't tell whether they were reading, and they were both great, spontaneous. And of course, I thought you were going to say if Hillary Clinton had done that Howard Stern interview during the campaign, I think she probably would have won because that's the real Hillary Clinton.
Agree.
That I know.
Yes.
From law school.
Yes, I agree.
And that was a very good interview she did.
I saw Hillary Clinton, not the politician.
Yeah.
I saw Hillary,
the human being.
And I appreciated that, Lanny, and I just think Joe Biden needs to do that. But you know what I saw yesterday?
Agreed.
I saw yesterday the human side with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Obviously, I want to ask you, what do you think of the pick? But I guess a two-part question. That would be the first part of the question. But I thought the best moment was when Kamala Harris was talking about the late Beau Biden, and you saw Joe Biden in the background, emotional, and we don't see that from Donald Trump, right? We see the bad emotion. We saw the human side of Kamala and Joe Biden, and I think that's what the voters need to see. Would you agree with that? And what do you think about the pick?
I agree, and also as a general matter, the the human side of a candidate ultimately wins or loses elections, because we all react to issues and there's too much ideology on both sides, left and right. But ultimately, every political scientist and pollster will tell you likability and comfort level is what ultimately determines votes more than anything else. Not a generality, but it's most of the time. And Joe Biden, I've known since he was first elected to the Senate when we were both very young. I was running for Congress. He had just been elected as the youngest senator from Delaware. On the evening of his upset victory, his wife and little girl were killed in an accident on their way to headquarters. And he lived through that and then went through the boat tragedy. So the humanity side of him is very likable. And Kamala Harris may have the same problem that Hillary had, which is from a distance over television, whatever the image is from a distance, sometimes is off-putting. But when you get to know them and the screen comes down, as I believe happened yesterday, she's extremely, I've known her since she was DA of San Francisco, extremely funny, likable, down to earth. As much as you would want to find somebody likable and comfortable, Kamala is, but she has come across over television the same way my old friend Hillary, in a way that just is a misperception of who she really is.
Say what you want about Donald Trump. He did that interview with Chris Wallace in 100-degree heat outside. Same with Jonathan Swan, who's I think is an extremely good interviewer. Do you think Joe Biden would be able to do both of those? And if not, and if the answer is no,
absolutely.
Okay. And if
he has to.
Okay. You think he absolutely has to?
I mean, I think part of the look back on the Hillary campaign was overly protective and afraid of the consequences of a awful Fox attack interview. And I always said to her, the more they attack, the better you are, because she is calm and I won't go back to Hillary days. Answer, yes. Joe is very, very good. He's good in not losing it if he's on, being attacked. I hope he does all those shows.
Sure. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Lanny Davis, political operative, lawyer, consultant, lobbyist, author. He's done a little bit of everything, also television commentary. Okay, so Lanny, my co-host would admit I am anti-Trump more than anybody. I think he is an awful human being. He's a terrible person. I think a lot of the people that have died from this virus are at his expense. With that being said, I have concerns with Joe Biden. Now, it's not his character. I think he's a very good man. And I agree with a lot of his policies, too. Here's my concern, Lanny, and you can tell me whether you agree or not. I'm concerned on that debate stage. I think Kamala will do a great job with Mike Pence, but I think a lot of Americans, sadly, Lanny, don't really care too much about debating policy. They enjoy the insults. I think a lot of the people that voted for Donald Trump, they like those insults and those cheap shots. Do you think Joe Biden will be willing to get into the ring, so to speak, and go down in the dumps with Donald Trump, and will be able to go after him? Because I'm not sure we will see that from Joe Biden.
So I have a mixed answer here. I'm not sure he should go down to the level. If there's a lower level than a crawling slug, that's where Donald Trump is as a human being, and what he says about people and the way he conducts himself. I don't want Joe down there. I don't think he can, even if he wanted to. But it is a dilemma. I see what you're saying. If you sit there and become a punching bag to Trump, you're kind of showing maybe weakness? I don't think so, but you're danger. So he's got to find a middle. I'm sorry to give you a weaselly answer.
No, that's okay.
Middle.
Yeah, I hear you.
He's got to fight back on the facts.
Right.
And not go into the dirt on the personal attack.
That makes sense. That makes sense. He's just got to be quick on his feet. I know that's not easy for somebody his age to do, and they're both, let's be honest, they're both in their 70s, but, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. All right, let's change topics here a little bit. I know you don't represent Michael Cohen any longer. My question to you is this, and again, I know you don't speak for him anymore, but if Michael Cohen knew that Donald Trump was this dirtbag scumbag, then why did he represent him for all those years to begin with?
So, look, I've got to follow this rule, and you have to forgive me. I know it would be excellent for you and your audience to hear me answer that and lots of other questions about Michael.
Sure.
I'm no longer his attorney, so I'm restricted professionally even
I understand.
talking about him.
No, I understand.
But what I would answer, so I'm not evasive, is when he publicly testified. So if I could do that, I'll do that.
Okay.
In answer to your question.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Explained to the congressional committee. Your question is the first question everyone asked. I asked. Everybody asked. How could you spend 10 years doing what he described as this man's dirty deeds? Those are his words.
Right.
And his answer was, it was shameful. He used the word shame.
Mm-hmm.
He used that word publicly.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he, for whatever reason, got caught up in the world of Trump. And rather than trying to rationalize it and explain it, he stepped up and said, I'm ashamed of what I did. And when I heard him say that, I said to myself, that's the most you can ever expect anyone who's spent 10 years now describing his own dirty deeds on behalf of
Understood. That's fair. All right, let's talk about another attorney, Michael Avenatti. He's been on this show a number of times. Obviously, he's not doing very well these days. But I'm going to compare him to Michael Cohen in this aspect, and you could tell me whether you agree or not. If Michael Cohen didn't have those, I guess you could say, the relationship that he had with Donald Trump, and if Michael Avenatti didn't go after Donald Trump as he did for years, there is no way that Michael Avenatti, in my personal opinion, would be behind bars. And I don't think your former client Cohen would have been behind bars either. I think when people that have had relationships with Donald Trump and any sort of situation with the Attorney General Barr, it seems like they go after people that have any negative things to say about the President of the United States. Would you agree with that?
So again, I got to be careful of what I say about Michael, so I'll stick to the public record. I won't comment on Avenatti. I had very brief interaction with him, and he certainly has troubles. And I don't know more than the instinct is that if you're on the opposite side of Trump, the Barr Justice Department targets you. That's my instinct. I don't have the facts.
Yep.
With Michael, I have already many times said that there is something very suspicious and inexplicable.
Right.
That of all the people who participated in the crimes that Michael spoke of, that he witnessed, that were orchestrated by Donald Trump,
right.
The prosecutor said directed and coordinated by Trump to pay hush money to a porn star. That's on the public record.
Right.
Of all the people involved in that decision, only one was prosecuted.
Right.
Only one went to prison.
Mm-hmm.
Only one in the entire Trump organization. Now we have the DA with Michael. Now we have the DA of Manhattan, who has the broader and jurisdiction for sure to prosecute criminally all the people in the Trump organization, including the man named Trump. I think on January 20th, sometime after 12 noon, he's going to face criminal prosecution by Mr. Bannon.
Do you believe, whether Donald Trump wins or not, but let's assume he doesn't win, do you believe that at some point in the next several years, Donald Trump will be behind bars for a crime committed? Will he be found guilty of something?
I won't say behind bars or found guilty because of my profession. We presume innocence until proven guilt. But there's no doubt in my mind that he will be indicted based upon what I know in the public record that is a crime committed that is not in dispute. So I'm able as a lawyer to say, here's a fact not in dispute. Donald Trump called Individual 1, according to the federal prosecutors, coordinated and directed a criminal conspiracy felony for which Michael Cohen pled guilty. That's a crime. So there's an indictment. A sitting president, supposedly you can't indict. At least no one's tested that. But the DA of Manhattan has no such memo in the Justice Department that tells him he can't indict. He could indict Trump right now.
Right.
But waiting until after the election would be my advice. No one's asking my advice. But I do believe he will be indicted, yes.
Wow. All right. Well, we'll have to wait and see here. Lanny, you've been involved in politics for a very, very long time. Have you ever? I'm 40 years old, but in my lifetime, I say to myself, I've never seen this country, number one, as divided politically and as divided with racial tension with what's going on throughout the country. What do you make of where we are in this country right now?
So first of all, I have to do a personal comment, and then I'll answer your question.
Sure.
So now I'm thinking back 20 years ago. You were 20 years old. You were an eager, certainly very good-looking young man who came up to me and asked me, "Why are you so nice to have?" Anyway, now I'm figuring your age out.
It was actually 2004. That was when it was in Boston.
So you were younger than you were somewhere.
24 years old. Yep. Yep.
I can do the math. Look, I'm going to try to be. How can I possibly be nonpartisan when it comes to this evil monster? I don't like to use words like that. When I'm on Hannity and I'm opposite people, I try to use facts and not adjectives. I try. It is impossible for me not to call him evil and a monster.
No, he's a scumbag.
I
agree. We agree.
I'll try to at least do my best to make it even-handed.
Sure.
I see tremendous hatred and vitriol on the left side of my party where I reside. I'm a liberal, whatever you call. They now call me a progressive, but I know that I'm to the left. The vitriol and hatred that I saw in 2016 from that side of the party towards Hillary Clinton was scary.
Mm-hmm.
I had great respect for Senator Sanders. I still do. But there was something called Bernie Brothers that used the Internet to attack viciously Hillary Clinton, probably worse than any attacks I've ever seen, on my side of the aisle. On the other side, I get attacked, of course, and I expect that. So the answer is on both sides. Let's say it's a football field. Let's put it in perspective. From the 10-yard line to the goalpost, we've got a serious problem, and I believe on the Republican side, their serious problem is flat-out racism, anti-Semitism, white nationalists, and now we have this QAnon conspiracy, not really, literally nutty, crazy people are between the 10-yard line and the goalpost. But it's never been worse.
Yeah,
now we have the rest of the football field to deal with. I think there are genuine conservatives that close their eyes, hold their noses, and are still for Trump because they don't like liberals and what we stand for. I respect that. I don't think they should be closing their eyes and holding their nose to someone who is tearing apart our Constitution. The only thing that keeps him from being an autocrat like Putin and trying to abolish everybody but himself as the power is that he has to worry about re-election. The biggest reason not to vote for Trump, even if you don't like Biden, is for goodness sakes, if the only thing that kept him even slightly mentally balanced and respecting at least something in the U.S. Constitution was his desire to get reelected. What will it be like if it's 4 years without him worrying about that?
Agree. I agree. Yeah. I guess. Yeah.
The reason not to vote for Trump, even if you're an economic conservative and you don't want Joe Biden and liberal programs, et cetera.
Sure. I guess this would be my last question for you, Lanny, and we appreciate your time. I mean, I think this is going to be a very close race. I really do. I thought Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016. I was wrong. I don't know if I could even make a prediction here. I don't know what's going to happen. If you ask me right now, I think it's a coin flip. I think Joe Biden will win the popular vote, as Hillary Clinton did, but I don't know about the Electoral College. I just don't know, Lanny, and I don't know if I have faith, the majority of Americans, in doing what I think, at least, is the right thing. So how do you see this thing playing out? This will be my last question for you. And what do you think is going to happen November?
So, of course, I was wrong with everybody else. So I have to be very humble in answering this question. I don't know either, and I think there is a pathway for Trump to win. It's a great odds against it, but I would have said that in 2016. Here's the difference. A whole bunch of people didn't like Hillary Clinton and stayed home after Comey wrote his letter, and her polling numbers crashed in most of the battleground states. It's an unwritten story, except in a certain book written by a certain author named me, where I proved that what happened in the last 10 days, as the polls did show, everyone said the polls were wrong. They were not wrong. Let me repeat that. The polls were accurate in 2016. They predicted she'd win the popular vote within 0.5%. That's called accurate. But if you go to the battleground states, on October 28th in the morning, she was winning by a landslide in all the battlegrounds, including being ahead in Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona. But within 10 days, she dropped like a rock, and certainly in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan.
Right.
My answer to your question is she lost those 3 states, or she would be president, by 70,000 votes altogether out of 14.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do the math, given what Trump has done to the country, before the pandemic, he had never gotten more than 42, 44% job approval rating. No incumbent has ever been reelected where he never touched 50% approval rating like this man. You'd have to think, given what's happened, it's worth 70,000 out of 14.5 million voters turnout difference.
Right.
That would elect a Democrat just in those 3 states alone, much less what we're seeing now in the polls.
Gotcha.
So I agree. We don't know what he's going to do with the mailing system. We don't know what he's going to do and allow the Russians or encourage the Russians to do. So that's the question mark. But I think we're going to win.
Well, your son is Seth Davis, isn't it? We got to get him on, don't we? We got to get him on. Talk some hoops.
First of all, thank you for mentioning. I am a long time. My son used to say, "Dad, everybody calls me the son of Lanny Davis." Now I'm called the father of Seth Davis.
Well, your son's very talented.
Doesn't all know that he does the NCAA Final Four with
Yeah.
as well as Buckley and blah blah.
Yeah.
He's a great son. He's a great father, and it's because of the pandemic we didn't see him on the Final Four. But he's
very
great.
talented.
Thank you for giving him a plug.
Sure, he's very talented. He does a really good job on television covering college basketball. Well, Lanny, you do a great job as well. I really do appreciate your time, and maybe another.
Me on again. This was a great,
love to.
A great conversation.
Love to have you on again before the elections. Lanny Davis, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Oh, thanks a lot, Lanny.
Thank you. Former special counsel to Bill Clinton and former lawyer. I did not know that, for Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen's out now, so maybe I would imagine that's probably a reason why Lanny Davis joining us on the show. Obviously, he's a Democrat. Obviously, he's a liberal. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to call him biased, but make no mistake about it. As I said with Roger Stone, by the way, and I don't want to compare the two, but I will here. They're both very intelligent people. Just one person, in my personal opinion, happens to be a racist, and the other one happens to be Lanny Davis. That's all.